it's Rebecca, and today I am very excited to share my first bullet journal monthly setup for 2023. Last year, I chose themes each month based on different songs that I liked, but this year I'm going to let myself just freely choose themes. I will be celebrating the Lunar New Year in January, and 2023 is the year of the rabbit according to the Chinese zodiac. I did a Chinese lantern theme 2 years ago, but I wanted to bring it back this year in a different style. As I was doing research, I actually came across an amazing theme that was pretty similar to what I imagined, so I drew a lot of inspiration from Junie Sun's studio. I linked her video in the description down below, so with that, I will now focus on the journal. I typically will separate the cover page from the quote page, but this year I decided to combine them into one. I started out with a lowercase serif font for writing January towards the top center of the page on the right. This font was actually really simple to do because after starting with the basic letter, I was able to thicken the parts of the letters that were needed by referencing a serif font online. This was really helpful to do in pencil first because I could fix any of the letters before inking. Next, I wanted to draw the image on the cover, which is this little bunny releasing sky lanterns. For the bunny on the bottom left corner of the spread, I started out with guide circles for its head, body, and hind legs. From there, I looked at a reference from the bullet journal video I mentioned earlier and tried my best to get the proportions correct. In comparison, the lantern doodles were much simpler. I found that the easiest way to draw these lanterns was to start with an oval and to divide it into quarters with a letter X. From there, I extended 3 lines along the top of the oval from around where the lines from the X intersected the oval. To finish the lanterns, I then connected the extended lines using a curve. I wanted to make sure that the lanterns all floated across the page in a bit of a diagonal from where the bunny was to the top right corner. I also mixed in a few smaller and more cylindrical lanterns to give the image the depth of lanterns in the distance. It quite honestly reminded me of a scene from Tangled, but I am really happy with how the page turned out, and the simple lanterns balanced out really well with the more complex drawing of the bunny. Before I added color to the page, I just wanted to go ahead and add in a quote along the top left and bottom right of the spread. The quote reads, "Make a wish and set it free." I felt like this was very fitting for the lantern theme because the Lantern Festival is known to be a place where you write down your wish on the lantern and then you release them into the air. I think it goes for a lot of things, but I find that when I write down something, it helps me to let go of the thought. The celebration seems very fitting for a new year because it brings a lot of dreams for a fresh start and new goals to accomplish. Now that the fine liner is all laid out, I will go ahead and add the color to the spread. I mentioned in my last couple of bullet journaling videos that I wanted to get back into watercoloring, so I thought that the new year would be a perfect time to start. I am using my Kuretake watercolor set and water brush pens. Whenever I start watercoloring again, the one thing that I'm terrible at is controlling the amount of water that I use in my bullet journal and remembering about how much blending I can do on the page without it bleeding through. My journal has 160 GSM paper, so for the most part it does hold up decently to watercolor, but I still try to be as careful as possible to prevent bleeding. On the bunny, I am using a light brown color, and you can see that I started quite light and then slowly added more pigment to parts of the bunny that would have more shading and left parts of the bunny white where there would be highlighting. I pretty much used just the one shade for the bunny, but I did add a bit of light pink to the ear and near the cheeks to add more depth and dimension. The lanterns were very easy to color since I started with a light yellow and added oranges and reds to create a gradient on them. As the lanterns at this festival are made of paper, using watercolor gives you the feeling that the lanterns are more translucent like they would be if you saw them outside for real. I went ahead and continued this process for the rest of the lanterns. You'll notice that the black fine liner that I used earlier didn't smudge or bleed, and that is because the ink I used is archival ink. It's really helpful to me so that I can easily watercolor over my sketches. I went back through and added a more intense yellow to the bottom of the lanterns to mimic where the flame would shine brightest at. Finally, this last step was completely optional, but I traced around the bunny and the bigger lanterns with a thicker fine liner to make the doodles pop out more on the page. Moving on to the monthly layout, I started it with the same lowercase serif font that I used on the cover page. I found that I barely went back to these spreads in my journal, so I'm adding a few more sections on this page to hopefully make the spread more useful. One of these sections is a small monthly goals area. I started with the section header in the same serif font as the title. Underneath it, I added 3 bullet points where I can write the goals that I have for January. I haven't given this much thought yet, but I hope that writing the goals down will motivate me to try and reach them. I did want to include a calendar overview, so I started with coloring an orange rectangle where I wrote the days of the week later. Then I started on the calendar itself. I actually started with the light yellow to highlight the top line of each box where I later wrote the dates. I wanted to be careful so that no ink would smudge, so it was easier to do the color first and then add the outline with the fine liner on top of it. I mostly used the ruler to create clean lines, but I did decide to round the corners on the calendar because I felt like it went better with the curves from the lanterns. Since there was still a lot of area to the right of the calendar, I filled it by adding 2 small curved rectangular sections. I made the top line orange to match the calendar, and then I drew yellow lines across it so that it would look like a small notebook paper. You'll see it later, but I titled these sections Growth Tracker and Wishlist. Typically, I don't really love writing down my number of followers on my different social media platforms, but as a lot of my goals for next year surround creating content on those platforms, I wanted to write down my starting point so that next year I can look back and hopefully be encouraged by how much I was able to accomplish. I ended up choosing a wish list for the other section because I thought that it would be a good motivator to be able to see what I want to be saving my money for. I ate out a lot this past year, but I'm hoping that I will be cooking for myself more in 2023 and therefore hopefully saving more. I used watercolor on the bunnies and the lanterns in the same way that I did on the previous page, but I am a lot happier with how the watercoloring turned out, especially on the bunny. Watercoloring definitely requires practice, so I want to find more time to watercolor freely or to at least use my watercolor more in my bullet journal. I mentioned it beforehand, but I just took my pen to write the days of the week, the dates on the calendar, and the section headers. My pen is not waterproof, so I made sure to use it last. Then I almost forgot, but ended up remembering to outline the doodles again with the thicker fine liner. The bottom of the spread kind of bothered me because it felt empty, but I ended up deciding that less is sometimes more, so this spread is complete. Like the previous two, I began the weekly spread by writing the title at the top center of the layout. I typically start my weeklies on Monday, but since this is the first spread of 2023, it includes New Year's Day, so I divided the spread into 8 sections with 4 on each page. I will probably move to making 4-week weekly spreads after this, but it's really nice to do these more elaborate spreads for 1 or 2 week weeklies. I alternated the sections for the days of the week and dates using the yellow and orange tombos, but then I drew 2 bunnies sitting on top of the sections and then lanterns all around the page. While you enjoy the time-lapse of the outlining and watercoloring, I like to take this time during my weeklies to just catch up and let you know about my mindset each month. You might have noticed, but I was a lot more diligent in keeping a regular posting schedule on YouTube the last couple of months. It started because I just wanted to catch up on editing my vlogs that I filmed from my trips, and to some extent it is still that way. I still have more than a handful of vlogs from my trips last year that I want to go through, but the bigger reason that I want to catch up is so that I can start making new content. Don't get me wrong, I love my travel vlogs, but I'd love it if I could share it with you all closer to when they're happening rather than a couple of months later in retrospect. So be on the lookout for those concert vlogs soon, and let me know if there's any content that you'd like to see here. Though I started out mainly doing art on this channel, this space has always been a creative outlet for me, and I'm excited to see where it goes next. Similar to my last point, I definitely want to continue to stream over on Twitch regularly, but I also am hoping to edit some of those VODs to create some enjoyable videos that you can watch on other platforms. Finally, with all of these big goals and wishes for my future, I also know that content is a lot of work, especially with a full-time job. I want to be kind to my mental and physical health, so I will hopefully be taking more rest, and I want to be less harsh on myself when choosing to rest. If you set New Year's resolutions or goals, I'd love to hear what they are in the comments down below. Well, that is it for my mindset at the moment, but I finished off the weekly spread by writing the days of the week and dates on the calendar, as well as re-outlining the doodles. Taking one last look at these spreads, I hope that you enjoyed this Lunar New Year lantern theme for the Year of the Rabbit. I definitely feel like my watercoloring improved as I continued through the spreads, but nonetheless, I'm very satisfied with how it turned out. Have a happy new year, and I'll see you all in 2023. Bye!